everybody. This is the regular meeting of the Housing Committee for June 5th, 2024. I am Kathy Hunter, and I will be chairing tonight's meeting. And tonight we're joined by our Housing Committee members, Warner Marshall, Elaine Feldman, Louis Schaefer, Jim Graham, and Mary Dean. So the first item on our agenda is the approval of the May 1st minutes. Did everybody get a chance to, oh, it should be 2024 minutes. Oh yeah, this is 2024. Okay. Has everybody had a chance to look at those minutes?
Yeah.
Do you have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second item is public comment. You're good, you're just here to listen? That's fine. All right, seeing no one else for public comment, I'm going to move on to my housing chair report. And, just to follow up to the incentive housing zone program I talked about, bringing somebody in here to talk about that program that's supposed to be rolled out pretty soon by Department of Housing. I actually had DOH scheduled to be at the next town planning and zoning meeting for July 1st. And this would have been a joint meeting, but at the same time, David Fink from SCROG, who's a SCROG consultant, had contacted the first selectman to schedule a meeting. And that was also a joint meeting, and so, Mika scheduled that for July 1st. And I didn't see any problems with having both presentations, because I thought it would actually be good for this committee to only go to one special meeting, but our planning and zoning was, I think, they were concerned that it may be too much for one meeting, because there was a public hearing, and they didn't know how long that would go on, so the presentation for the Department of Housing on the incentive housing zones will take place in the September meeting, because they don't meet in August. So that would be scheduled for September 3rd. So we're going to have two special meetings then for the Housing Committee. So the next meeting will be July 1st. That's at the town's planning and zoning meeting. I'll have to send out an agenda. So there'll be a special meeting between the Housing Committee and TBC to listen to the DOH presentation. And then in September 3rd, which is actually on a Tuesday, that's the day after Labor Day, we will have the presentation from DOH. Any questions on that one? Okay. I did send out the video again from the Guilford that talked about, why Guilford needs affordable housing. And I just wanted to kind of circle back on that again to see if anybody, thinking about whether or not we should do something similar to that.
I thought it was
video.
excellent, really, and very applicable to a town like ours.
Yeah.
But how to best present it so that, what forum would people be most likely to see it?
Yeah, I think in Guilford they actually had a running like in the library and in the community center or wherever people kind of congregate. So it was just kind of a loopy thing that they would show from time to time. But it seems like something worked in Guilford because they're getting affordable housing projects. I just we thought about it. I think it was a couple of years ago, and I was trying to get funding to do it, and that just got to be difficult. But now, there may be another interest to do it. It seems like they're kind of reviving the interest in just an effort to try to promote, affordable housing and the needs that people have in different towns. So.
Would we need approval from the Board of Selectmen to do that, or could we ourselves approach the library and see if they would be willing to show it somewhere in the library? Have it just, I don't know.
Yeah, I do, that reminds me, I do have another update I have to give to them next week. I could mention, the idea of the video. I did send it to Mika, and he thought it was a great idea. The question is, how to do it.
Yeah.
I even thought maybe, the Amity High School students are pretty sharp, and I'm wondering whether or not it could be like a school project in September. I don't know if they have a video program or anything.
Who did the Guilford one? Was it professionally done?
I think it was professionally done, or was it, who did it? I should know this. I think there was somebody that was pretty good with the videos that worked for the Partnership for Strong Communities at the time. And so they spearheaded that. So I did ask the partnership, but they don't have that person on board anymore, and they don't have the funding to help us out for that. But, I could try again, maybe with the Community Foundation of Greater New Haven. There are grants available, but I would need to apply through a nonprofit organization that has a budget. I think it was 1 million or less, or 2 million or less. And it's actually kind of hard to find a nonprofit that has a small budget. I had approached Jen from Bethel Center to see if she would do, and at the time she was kind of jammed up with some of her projects, but maybe I could revisit that again. So that might be a way of getting it done. But I
Well,
was just
there's
wondering.
2 things. There's 3 things that I can think of at the top of my head. One, you have to have somebody to do it,
Right.
and they give you a budget, and then you know what you need to spend. In this case, I can't remember, but were there things about the Guilford thing that we could just crib, and that might make it cheaper if we had their permission? And the other thing is, you have to have somebody who's got the time to work with them to make sure that they're up to date with that information. And I don't volunteer you for everything, Kathy.
Yeah, no, it would be a fun project if I didn't have a
It
daytime.
would be a fun project. But it would be, yeah, somebody who you were out on the right track to ask Partnership for Strong Communities, because if that person could do it for us as they did it for Guilford, then they'd have a leg up already, and it would be that much more.
Yeah. Well, maybe I do have a scheduled phone call with Sean Gio, so maybe I'll try to revisit that again.
I really don't know anything about making videos or who does them, either professionally or in an amateur way. You're right that the high school does have a video program, and kids who are interested in that. But it'd be much better if it was done professionally. And you get it done. It might, take months and months and months and months for
Yeah.
them to do. I wouldn't want to put them under that kind of pressure.
Yeah, but they are pretty talented. I mean,
They are. There's no question about that.
their productions, their theatrical productions are
Yeah.
top notch.
That's
So
amazing.
I would think, if they had the right instruction, and it would be a good way for them to get, immersed in these different issues in town. So, but anyway, okay,
I think it'd be a great idea. Can we have 2 videos? One.
Yeah.
One.
Well, maybe we could try. Maybe both tracks. Maybe I'll put this on.
I don't know who to ask at the high school, except Lynn Quacco, the careers person. If it's done as part of the curriculum, then of course you have a much better, more supervision, and you have a better chance of getting it done on schedule, because they're also busy. But she's head of careers, so that's.
I just
not-
thought maybe that
not-
video
But
arts
she might
department.
know. I really don't know.
You don't know.
Not that I'm expected to.
Where's Miles when I need him?
Yeah, where's Boston?
Okay. I will email Miles since he's not here and put him on that before he goes to Morocco. Okay. What else? Another item was, I think I might have mentioned this, but when I went to the opening of the affordable housing development in Orange, I did have a chance to talk to the CHAFA, head there, and she was talking about, Chaffа mortgages, like, well, if you have a homeownership, a home financed by a Chaffa mortgage, that would count towards your affordable housing count. And she said it's even up high, like the mortgage limit for a Chaffa mortgage is up to like $430,000. So, there could be some houses in Woodbridge, and there probably are a couple houses for $430,000 that, if that was financed by a Chaffa mortgage.
In the past, Chapa did not cover mortgages that had septic and well. They had to be.
Really?
That was way back in the past. So
Interesting.
that might be something to just check.
Yeah, well, to that point, what I wanted to do, and I was gonna throw this out there, is to see if anybody was interested in doing this little project. I did talk to a realtor, about like, gee, why don't you use Chaffa mortgages more, that could count.
Yeah.
And as she said, it's not like the preferred financing, instrument that, it's cumbersome, it takes long, and a lot of times if you have like a, cash, a cash deal or a conventional mortgage versus Chaffa, that takes a long time, then, you usually go with something that's not a Chaffa mortgage.
I don't think every bank will do it.
Yeah, so maybe there are some obstacles, and what I'd like to do, since, the Chaffa head was like, why don't you just do this? I want to like say, well, this is the barriers that we have identified as to why we can't do this, and if you could overcome those barriers, then maybe we could do that. So I'm just wondering if anybody wants to take the job or the task of maybe reaching out to some realtors and doing, or maybe coming up with a survey, just ask a couple questions to the realtors as to why, what's the barriers of using Chaffa mortgage, or how could we promote the use of Chaffa mortgages in Woodbridge? So I don't know.
You're looking for a volunteer.
Well, yeah, I mean, I could probably call Buddy up, or call even Pat Cardoza, who I talked to.
And I have a close friend who's a realtor. I'll
Yeah.
ask her.
Unless we all kind of, pick a realtor and assign a realtor, so do you
We
want to
can
do
all do
something
it,
like that?
yeah.
Yeah, we can all
We can all do it.
reach out to the people
The
we
people
know and
we
ask
know,
about
yeah.
it.
So maybe we just have like come up with like 2 questions.
And we can call everybody who used to be on the Affordable Housing Committee and say, you have an opportunity to assist.
All right, so why don't we,
Questions.
so the question is, what did I just say before?
You just said, what are the barriers and what are the
How can
challenges?
What was that, Mary?
You want to know if
How can we
used?
promote?
Right, how can we promote the use of Chaffa mortgages for homeownership opportunities?
And we want to know if there's any, are there any downsides to that?
Yeah, what are the
Or
barriers?
obstacles?
Yeah. What are the barriers? Okay. All right, so I could reach out to Buddy and Pat perhaps.
It's sort of hard for me to imagine that something hasn't been written about this.
I'm sorry.
I'll look into that to see if I can find some literature or something.
Okay,
I'll contact Holly Shambrown.
okay. So you're gonna do Holly, you're gonna do your friend. Jim, do you know anybody?
Other than Holly, no.
Well, what about Buddy? What about the people who are on the committee?
Do you wanna call up Buddy?
Sure.
You know
Okay,
him.
why
I'll
don't
call
you-
Buddy.
You call Buddy, I'll talk to Pat.
Think
Holly.
Donovan knows anything?
I have Arlene
Right.
Levine.
I'll
Is it-
ask Donovan. Warner, do you know anybody? No, a realtor as to
Oh.
why, no, okay.
I don't know if Steve Rifkin of Planet Realty does anything in Woodbridge, he's in Haven. Think he does anything here, Jim?
I don't know.
I'll call him and ask him.
Yeah, maybe somebody outside of Woodbridge would have a perspective that might be useful.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's fine. Okay, that's, oh, Chris Lovejoy, right? I think she's a realtor, right?
I'm not sure.
She was at Buddy, maybe I can have Buddy ask she was part of the Rotary Club.
But, yeah, but I don't remember if she was a realtor or not.
I'll ask him to reach out to more people too.
Kathy, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just looked up mortgages,
Mhm.
banks that deal with Chaffin mortgages, and I have a list of certain places that do deal with Chaffin mortgages.
Right, right. I know there's,
They're like First American Home in Putnam, First Premier Mortgage in Norwalk. I have to kind of check through the list. But a lot of the banks would be starting to get brokers, mortgage brokers who do the
yeah,
financing.
you know who's a mortgage broker, I think, or does mortgages, is Val from Conservation. I forgot her last name, but there's a member of Conservation who does mortgages. I could reach out to her as well and ask her. All right, so I think that would be a nice assignment to report on next month. I also did send out today, the SCROG has another housing working group meeting, who's in charge of housing creation, which I think is an interesting topic. Because I started thinking, who is in charge of housing creation? Because I get a hard time from my husband, like, how many units have you created so far? I'm like, well, we don't do the units, we don't make the units. But it's, that begs the question, like,
Well, Warner probably knows the answer to that one,
yeah,
right?
who's in charge?
Who's in charge?
So it's really, our job, as I try to explain it, we're creating a climate, trying to create a more friendlier, easier environment so people would come in here to create affordable housing. But I think that session will be interesting. They got two speakers. Sean, who talked to us a couple years ago, the policy director, Partnership for Strong Communities, and Mark Barnhart, who he's the economic development director of Fairfield,
Oh, I don't know.
and that's the report I sent out last week about the study that we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
So if anybody's interested, you can also Zoom in or link in. It's a hybrid meeting, but I think I'm going to try to attend that.
That's next Wednesday?
It's next, it's the last Wednesday of the month,
Oh.
so it's the 26th.
I forgot my calendar.
And do I have anything else I want to talk about? No, I think that's it. So is there any questions on any of that I brought up? Okay. The next item is a proposed amendment, because, we did talk about this in terms of correcting something that could have been misleading in the plan. I do think it is interesting that since this was a template that was used by RKG, that was the consultant that SCROG hired to do the plan, that paragraph appears in 13 other affordable housing plans, of which no one had an issue with it. But that being said,
Are you sure?
perhaps, they don't have residents that are as concerned about making sure
It's great concern.
everything is correct. I'm looking for, did I get a copy of that?
Oh, I might not have given it to
Oh,
you.
this is, I think I have it in
Yeah.
my file.
I think I skipped over your chair.
All right, so one is just And Mary helped me out with this a little bit as well, to try to keep it simple. And then there's some additional text I would propose, but could be talked out of. But so I have the purpose of the amendment is to clarify, the sentence, a sentence in the last paragraph, last sentence, that doesn't read right. Is to clarify, clarify sentence in the last paragraph, last sentence of page 12 of the town's adopted affordable housing plan. So the sentence that it read that outlined in this plan article, now if you read this in isolation, of course it's not correct, but again, there was a lot of preceding information before this, but if you didn't read anything and just jumped to the
What
last
sentence?
sentence,
It would be misleading.
it would be misleading.
Yeah.
So we wanted to correct that. So it reads, outline in this plan the goals and strategies co-produced by the town and region to encourage capacity building efforts to reach the state's mandated 10% requirement. So to clarify that, it's to reach the state's mandated 10% requirement for providing exemption from section 8-30G appeals procedure, and then, it refers them to the page 8, see 8-30G for more information, instead of going through the whole explanation of what it is. And thanks, Mary, for that recommendation.
Simplify.
It's simple.
Don't
So
get into it.
I'm hoping that would clarify that misleading sentence.
Sure. Yes.
Well, as you know, I feel regret that we have to amend it at all. I'm concerned about starting to make amendments, because, this isn't the only typo or thing that we would change that, lack of clear wording or whatever that could conceivably be changed. And I'm a little worried about doing that.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to add the additional text, because I think the point was no, there's no requirement, we don't have to build affordable housing, when in fact there's a lot of rules, there's a lot of state mandates, the Connecticut Constitution, the federal and state for housing laws, in this one in particular, so I didn't list everything, but just to put it into the context of, under the Connecticut Zoning Enabling Act, the municipal zoning regulations are required to. Okay, so, that's pretty firm. Now, the required to talks about, affirmatively furthering fair housing, promoting housing choice, economic diversity in housing, including housing for both low and moderate income households, addressing significant disparities in housing needs and access to educational, occupational, and other opportunities, and then expressly required development of housing, based on the state's consolidated plan. So I just thought that could just balance out the fact, yes, it's not the 10% requirement is in relation to the builder's remedy, but in fact, we are required under our zoning regs to promote affordable housing. Now, mind you, promote and required are, but I still think it's important to state that. So,
At 10% though, we're not required to do 10%.
I'm not saying that.
It doesn't say
What
that.
is our requirement?
Our requirement is we have the zoning enabling acts.
But not a percentage. We're not held to a percent?
We're not held to a percent,
That would
no.
not work.
No. We probably will be in the future be held to a number called a fair share number, which probably will be more than 10%. But at this point, these regulations are becoming stronger and stronger every year, as evidenced by this Zoning Enabling Act that was passed in 2021, that we have to be promoting housing. And now they want to get a little bit more stronger in the enforcement as to what that is. So at the end of the year, the state is going to be coming up with a methodology for calculating how many, what is the number based on, what a, more comprehensive methodology than just 10% across the board.
Right.
So taking into consideration, land and wealth and just different factors. And there's a whole, that could be a whole course on that. I won't get into that, but that's going to happen that is supposed to happen by the end of the year. But they were kind of late hiring somebody to do that, so we'll see. So anyway, the question is, a long way of me saying, I would like to suggest that we add this into what would be on page 12. It's not saying that we're going to redo the plan and plop this in page 12. I know, Mary, you're like wondering whether or not it would actually fit within there.
I mean, you can make it fit, but it'll be about this big.
Yeah, but I don't think it's
We could put it
necessary.
in a box.
Yeah, I wasn't my thought was I was just gonna have this as an amendment that'd be linked in. So when we do a total rewrite, we would just factor this in, like zoning does. They have amendments. They don't change
Yeah,
the zoning
they make the
regulations.
Oh, okay. That should work.
They just post
should
amendments,
work.
and then when they do a rewrite, they just make
Yeah.
sure they incorporate
Yeah.
everything in.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
The other thing that I mentioned to Kathy, that one of my concerns was that this piece of legislation, which I still think needs to be referenced in specific so people can look at it if they want to. That one was passed after the plan was written and approved. So again, I'm concerned about opening up the gates
I know this was
to,
passed before.
no, not in the summer of 2021.
This was passed, right? Ours was 2022, right? No, our affordable housing plan was submitted before June 1st, 2022.
If this had been in place when our plan was being written, it would have affected the wording of the plan significantly.
No, I think we talked about, well, we didn't, we left it up to the consultants as to what.
The consultants would have
Right.
affected, it would
Yeah,
have affected.
yeah, and
it.
they
Well,
elected.
I could easily be wrong, I don't mean to suggest I looked it up or anything.
Yeah, no,
But-
this came in June 2021, which was before we submitted our plan, and RKG did not elect to put it in there. I don't know why.
Because they would be happy.
I don't know, maybe because they're from Massachusetts and they weren't up on Connecticut, regulations that were passing. I don't know. I mean, but, they did talk about it in terms, they stuck to just 830G and 830J, which was what the offshoot of the plan.
Well, as I said, there are many places, and I mentioned another one in our correspondence, where I thought if people actually look at what it says, we wouldn't have wanted to necessarily say that. That's not precisely what
Yeah.
we wanted to say,
Yeah.
including this language right here. But I also don't want to work on this plan anymore. I want to we know what we need to do, and the plan has a role in that, and it makes the foundation for what we need to do.
Mhm.
But continuing to worry about the wording of it and work on that at this point in the juncture, I think is, I think
It's not a good use of time.
No, it's not,
And
but I think this was a point of contention that they wanted
Yeah, it
it
was.
corrected, so I
Yep.
thought if we could put this on there to say, okay, we
Just so I
corrected
can
it,
have it.
we clarified what this is.
Okay.
Perhaps, that will
Well, I hope they don't
suffice
jump
for
us off
a
this.
bit. And the fact that the demographics,
Well,
You give a mouse a cookie?
I read that book.
No.
Yeah,
Give the mouse the cookie and they'll want the whole bag.
yeah, well, it's a good faith effort.
No, I think it's fine.
Because there's
And I
something
think
wrong
it's,
with that. It's
to me, it's good to
hopefully no one
introduce,
noticed.
what our obligation is based on the zoning. It gives us an entree to do that. If this is okay, is there any more discussion on this, or else I'd like to make,
So, just, this belongs, can I suggest, it originally said, under Connecticut's zoning enabling act, Woodbridge's zoning regulations are
Right.
required to.
I changed it.
So, yeah, so, I mean, if you want to change it back, do it.
Well, I think that's, you know, I think the
Or
point.
you could say Woodbridge, all municipal towns, including Woodbridge, are required to. You could say
Okay,
that.
that's-
But right now, it's got a apostrophe in the wrong place, so we're gonna have to
Okay.
fix it.
Any
in-
municipal,
All
Connecticut-
municipal towns, including Woodbridge, which includes Woodbridge. Well, that's kind of redundant. All municipal towns.
All Connecticut municipalities, including Woodbridge. Or Woodbridge, like all Connecticut municipalities.
I think we'll just say,
How I
under
spell my
Connecticut
time.
zoning enabling act, all municipal towns, zoning regulations are required to. Okay.
All towns, zoning regulations. Yeah, that works.
Or all town.
All towns. Apostrophe, zoning regulations are required to.
Or
That
maybe
does
we
it.
should say all municipalities zoning regulations.
Yeah.
Because there's towns and cities.
Is that a significant difference?
Well, municipalities includes towns and cities.
Okay. I stand corrected.
Is there any other discussion on this?
That's fine.
Okay, with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve this amendment for our Woodbridge Affordable Housing Plan.
Excuse me, can I?
Oh,
I see a word missing. I just want to note there's a word missing in the last bullet. Expressly require the development of housing, the state's consolidated plan, according to that state's.
Oh. that is
Should I look it
listed.
up?
Express required development of housing.
I can look it up and just put it in there.
Yeah,
it's gonna be like either reporting with or consistent with or
Yeah,
something. It's gonna
exactly.
be something like that, so you should.
Yeah, it's one of those words. This comes from something. I know what it is.
all right, I'll correct that, make sure that's correct then. Anything else?
You need a motion to approve this? Or-
Yeah, well, I was gonna make a motion, I need a second.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
Somebody's-
Oh.
Second.
Okay, second by Jim. All right, thank you.
Do we have to vote on it?
Yeah, we have to vote.
Oh, all in favor?
No.
All right, thank you.
Do we have to inform the BOS of this?
Yeah, I'm gonna
Yes.
tell, yes.
Next week, I think, right?
I have to do a, presentation,
Another
and I have
update.
to address this.
Yeah.
So I'll say that we approve this amendment, and I will clean it up and send it out to make sure it's right for everybody.
As a point of order, that we say, we moved to approve the minutes and we second the motion. I don't think we actually
Voted on.
voted on it.
Okay, that's all in favor
Of
of
minutes.
approving the minutes.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Yeah, you gotta catch me on that, because my Robert
I
rules
was
are.
typing, did you vote for the minutes and you seconded it? I mean, you
Yeah,
voted, you
yeah,
seconded? Oh,
yeah.
good. Thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
Okay.
Okay, we got that cleared up.
Okay, yeah, and with that, I'm also gonna be, discussing the demographics that they were concerned about, and the fact that we're gonna wait until the, consultants do their work and updating the demographics, and then if there's any significant, changes that would change, the scope of our plan, then we will update accordingly. But till then, I mean, we're already in year 2, right? We're almost halfway through. So we're gonna have to update this.
Yeah.
We're required to update this in 3 years anyway.
Yeah.
All right, where is my agenda? So the next item on the agenda is, all right, I just wanted to quickly talk about the state plan of conservation development. Did folks get to look at that a little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually good seeing you. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, look, I mean, it's pretty comprehensive.
Yeah, so I think some of the comments I wanted to make about, because the state is accepting comments until, through June 30th, so end of this month. So I wanted to make some comments regarding, you know, how, a way of having approaches where towns can move away from the us versus them, like it's either housing or conservation, how, you know, have approaches where we can work more proactively together to try to encourage that, you know, and I know the Connecticut Council on Conservation has been doing that with the different summits and stuff, but I wonder if the state, you know, through DEEP, could perhaps try to also encourage that more. But when you read the plan, they do bring out, you know, how they're trying to center equity in this, you know, realizing that there is, you know, conflicts in different policies and how to make policies more aligned with, you know, equitable outcomes. So, you know, one of the suggestions I have, and you know, because there's estates like Greenway Plan, and I probably got the percentages wrong, but I think it's a the state has a goal of preserving like 21% of their land mass in Connecticut or something of that sort, and they haven't reached the goal yet. And you know, some folks in Woodbridge feel that Woodbridge, because we have land, we should preserve as much as possible for the sake of the state, you know, to reach its goal. And that's where the conflicting agenda, you have that agenda, but then you also have a goal of 10%. It's not a requirement, but the state does have a goal of like 10%. So, you know, for towns where, you know, you have 1% affordable housing, then maybe the emphasis should be on more of the affordable housing and not necessarily for the sake of, you know, preserving land. If there's a conflict. I mean, there's some land that should be preserved. But as you see, you know, there's a lot of, when you look around, like how the land is preserved, there's some strategic decisions as to what land gets preserved. And I was talking to Mary a little bit about this. Is it's like there's properties around like the town borders that get preserved. And you know, why is that, right? It's because those towns have, well, public sewer and infrastructure they could easily hook up with. So if you look at like Derby, you have like the Derby farm there. When you look at, you know, in Sonia, you have Mazzaro Farm. When you look at, and I think that's probably why they're going a little crazy over the country club, is because you know, you have New Haven there. So if you look at the borders, you see that there's efforts to preserve our borders, to protect our borders. And so when you,
I'm not following that. I don't understand. What is it?
Oh.
I'm not following it.
if you look at where land is preserved,
Yeah, I got that part.
it's around our borders. You look at the Derby, there's like a farm. When you look at the border between Woodbridge and Derby, there's a farm in Woodbridge that's preserved.
Okay, I got you so far.
Yeah.
But it has to stay that way to keep the invasions or outflow? I mean,
Well,
like,
because
is it the
it's
Berlin Wall, or is it the, you know, like the Chinese buffer zone?
Well, it does serve as a buffer, because then it makes it harder, like if you want to, you know, think about expanding public infrastructure, well, you can't do that, there's a farm there.
Well, but the original development threat that was perceived for some of these things that you're talking about if the connection, I think, would be stated in a slightly different way. That those pieces of property were focused on because, unlike others that have no adjacent infrastructure, they were more under pressure for development and heavy use. And of course, the thinking is that's what you want to avoid for all the reasons that we've heard many times. Traffic, schools, all of, character, all the rest of it. So when you see that combination of things, you see a piece of open space that could be heavily developed, and you see the possibility of increasing the density because potentially the infrastructure could be expanded. That's what's going to raise a lot of red flags and open a lot of pockets. So I think it's that combination. It's not necessarily that they were deliberately trying, or they would say that they were deliberately
Well, they're not
trying
gonna say
to
they're
do it.
deliberately.
But
No, but
some of
that's
those
not-
farms are very old, right? I mean, they were developed,
Well, they were
like,
all-
what about like the one on Route 34, as you're coming down Baldwin and Route 34 near Fieldstone?
Yeah, right, right.
Isn't that a very, very, hasn't that been there for,
Oh, yeah,
like-
that one is
Yeah.
has been, yeah, the one on 34 in
Yeah.
Derby. I was
Is it
talking about
Earth
the
is
one
formed?
on,
The land anyway.
where Greenway comes up.
What's there? I
Is that
can't
Bald,
picture.
is that Baldwin?
Yeah.
What's it called? There's a farm there now, that they just developed. I
I don't
can't.
know, where is Greenwood?
Greenway comes out into Baldwin.
Yeah,
So there's
Oh,
a-
yeah, yeah,
it's like
yeah.
when they put the
Yeah,
the
yeah,
new
there's been a
light just
farm there,
down.
yeah.
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 There's a farm, active farm there,
Right.
because that was purchased with farmland, state farmland and local
Right.
farms.
But that's still a farm, I say.
It is again a farm, it was
Yeah.
sort of open space for a long time,
Right.
just plain old.
Or were there other farms? I have no idea. Were there other farms in Woodbridge that were developed to housing? I mean, was all of Woodbridge at one point the farm?
Yeah.
Or
Woodlands,
quarry.
pretty much.
Woodlands,
It's
pretty
a
much.
farm, Yeah.
Some of it was fox hunting, believe it or not.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just bringing that up. It's just kind of coincidental when you see the borders.
It's regrettable
There's
from
a
our
lot of,
perspective,
you
yeah.
know, because I always think about, well, gee, if you're near, it's easier to promote infrastructure if you're near like a town that has the infrastructure. Because when you look right across, you know, Mazzaro, it's interesting because you have Ansonia that has a higher density housing, and you know they're on public water, public sewer. But if you go, you know, across the street, you don't have that. So I'm just bringing out, you know, just an interesting observation that I never realized that there's a lot
I
of
actually never thought about it.
yeah.
But
Oh.
it just, one of the things I noticed in that report, under housing targets, the first one, they're looking at areas with existing supportive infrastructure.
Yep. Right.
But I didn't see any place, I mean, I didn't read the whole thing that carefully, but I didn't see anything promoting additional infrastructure.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah,
Did
they
you?
do, well, I mean, at one
Yeah.
point, they would, they're promoting areas where there's existing infrastructure, and that certainly would be the case for the Woodbridge Country Club. I mean, that would be consistent with the state's POCD, because they want you to build where there's existing infrastructure, and brownfields, you know, and that
That
certainly
would make, you know,
is
it's the most
both.
economically rational way to
Right.
proceed, right?
Yeah,
So that would be totally in sync with what the state would want. You know, they do say that, but then if you do look at the challenges they bring up, you know, they talk about the lack of housing construction for the past 2 years.
Yeah.
Racial and economic segregation with the most development-based subsidized housing clustered in segregated communities, and the perpetuation of segregation through zoning regulations. So they
They certainly address that
they
issue,
do
yeah.
address those issues, so I think, yeah, the preference would be to build in areas that have, you know, infill development or existing infrastructure.
What does
Um,
that word mean, What does that mean? I underlined it, infill. What-
Infill is when you have existing infrastructure.
Oh, okay.
Right, Warner?
Well,
Is that what the word means, infill? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's instead of like,
well, doesn't it just mean you have a building here and you have a building here and you infill?
yeah.
I mean, from an architectural point of view.
Yes.
From a planning point of view, maybe it means something more
Yeah.
advanced.
I never saw that word in print before. I wasn't sure what it meant.
You'd have to rewrite the zoning regulations to do infill, I'm afraid, in Woodford.
And then when it said, under current challenges, I just copied what it said. A fragmented, multi-layered landscape hinders timely development to meet current demands. So did they mean fragmented, multi-layered landscape? Are they talking between towns? Are they talking, I didn't really understand.
Yeah, they did have a footnote, but I would think that it's both. You know, the towns have regulatory barriers against like building high-density housing.
Landscape.
And also, you know, if you're doing affordable housing, you have to do, for the most part, you know, public layering of public subsidies, which gets really, really complicated, because sometimes if you have like big developments, you'll have like 6, 7 sources of funding in there, which makes it, you know, just it makes it a long process. I mean, you know, there's, you know, I had a development that took almost like 7 years, you know, to actually build because of all of the, you know, financing you had to layer on top of each other, because you have to have, you know, first person coming in and you gotta like leverage it, and everything takes so long to do, so.
How long did the one in Orange take, the most recent?
I think that started like 2019. Now you threw COVID in there, so
Yeah, true.
that probably added some time. But yeah, so that opened late 2023. So yeah, it took some time, because that was you know, that was a low-income housing tax credit, 9% competitive tax credit deal. So and that's, you know, you have to do syndication. It takes a long time to do those kind of deals. And actually, 4 years isn't that bad, but it does take a while for
Yeah.
these.
So I guess that's
That's
what it's
probably what they're-
referring
that's
to, a
probably what they're
fragmented,
talking about.
multi-layered landscape hinders timely development to meet current demands. True. This we know to be true.
Right. So in terms of doing some public comment, you know, I think it would be good that we provided something to this plan in terms of just, you know, creating an environment when both sides are working together. So I was gonna like draft something like that and maybe send it around for people's comments. Does that sound like a?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. And then people could just, you know, add on, you know, if you get a chance to look at the housing chapter isn't that long.
No.
So, but I think you have to read the whole thing in its entirety to talk about how different things play into each other. All right, the next item is the Woodbridge Plan of Conservation and Development. So I have some things to report on that since I am on planning and zoning. So there is going to be a community survey that's going to go out, even though I did say we did a survey for housing. They're doing a community survey to cover all the different components of a plan of conservation and development. So they're going to be looking at, you know, quality of life, housing, economic development, open space, natural resources, historical, cultural resources, community facilities, and just, you know, getting your take on whether or not there's enough, there's not enough, what are the issues. And that should be going out, it is scheduled to go out on Monday. So with that, I think it's really important that when this community survey comes out, that it's disseminated around to make sure people fill out that survey with comments to make sure it's not, doesn't become a lopsided,
Oh, okay.
survey. And that we voice our opinions on the importance of, housing and having promoting housing options. So, it may be that we do have a list of folks that participated in our different conversations. Maybe we just encourage people to complete that, but really, I think everybody needs to just, when it comes out, to just try to get people that complete it. And there's going to be a couple open-end questions, and I want you they have a list of, what is the most pressing issue, in town. So, just to encourage people to.
You've seen the survey?
Yeah, we reviewed it, just, we haven't, have any comments. Yeah, I did see the survey. But, we had some suggested changes. We'll see if those changes get in there. And it's supposed to go out with your tax bills. So there's going to be a QPR code that you kind of click in, and then you could take it. And they're also going to be doing a story map. That's it's a way, I guess, of where the public can go in and just see the different updates to the plan of conservation and development. So if people have any comments on anything, they're able to provide that comment. I thought that the consultants would be meeting with different committees and commissions, but apparently they're not. They're just really meeting with planning and zoning, and they're doing this community survey, meeting with planning and zoning, and they're just encouraging the committees themselves to come up with what they want to see reflected in the plan. And then they're going to have a couple charrettes later on to get input into the process. But I think for the most part, it's going to be up to us to draft some information as to what should be in the plan. And I do see that, again, we talked about this last meeting, so I don't want to get into it too much, but I think the area that we're going to be working on is the housing action plan. I mean, we have a affordable housing plan, but we probably need to frame that into what the POCD has in terms of ongoing actions, near-term action items, midterm action agendas, and talk about our different strategies and how we want to proceed with that. So that's probably just going to be something we're going to need to work on and to submit to them. And then, they'll be vetted, and, I'm sure people will have some things to say about it, but, I think we really do need to make sure this reflects,
Yes, definitely. Yeah, that's what our job is.
Right, so.
That's our job.
So I think we're going to be busy with that.
What is the time frame there?
With
Next summer?
No, this has to be approved by the Board of Selectmen before, I think it's May 25th, 2025, so it's a short time frame.
But it's next year.
And there's a lot of review time that's scheduled for review, so it actually has to be completed by January 2025.
Oh.
So it's on a very tight time frame.
That does sound like
So, all right, so the next thing is I wanted to just review the impact report I received from Mark Barnhart. And this is a great report, and I think it should be used. Did I copy the whole thing?
Here, I'll go get another one. Here's the,
Is there?
Does it have that?
there's
I
more.
don't know.
Oh,
I'm not
oh,
sure.
I
okay.
don't think we have that.
I'll go get another one.
I'm trying to find it on
I
here.
thought, all right, I thought maybe she would put it on one PDF. I think the most important, so what they did here so Fairfield has been tracking the impact of affordable housing, well, not, I shouldn't say affordable housing, the impact of multi-family housing, 10 units or more, whether or not they're affordable or not affordable. The impact on school enrollment, to see whether or not multifamily housing, has impact on the school enrollment, because that's a lot of pushback people have when you're talking about doing higher density housing. It's gonna overrun the schools, and it's going to cost the town.
No.
So they track the units, the number of units and the number of kids per unit, based on the address of the school enrollment and the multifamily developments. And at the end of the day, the impact of the students per dwelling was 0.13. So this demonstrates locally in Connecticut, because I know there's a lot of concern that, oh, well, that report's from Massachusetts, that report's from New Jersey, that's not,
Well, then the response to this will be that's reports from Fairfield.
this, well,
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
you're gonna do that.
but Fairfield to me is a good comparison, because it's next to a core city.
Yeah.
Just as, Fairfield is next to
Bridgeport.
Bridgeport, Woodbridge is next to New Haven, and that was the issues that, Mark had when he was in Fairfield, like, like people from Bridgeport are gonna flock over the borders and go to Fairfield, God forbid. And that's kind of the same thing you hear, in terms of creating multifamily units here.
So just sort of to look at it grossly, if you use these same figures, let's say if you built 10 units, new units, you get 1.3 more kids. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which would probably just cause the entire town to topple over and
Right.
go underwater.
So, I'm hoping, these type of reports, people will just, kind of get off certain arguments of that it's going to overrun the school system.
Does this, one thing does this, it says the number of units, but does it discuss the size of the units?
No.
I mean, I don't know if that matters.
No, I don't think
No,
it
nor
says,
the,
like, how many
the cost
bedrooms?
of them. It does say which ones are all affordable and which ones have an affordable
Them-
component.
Yeah, they must
But
have
it
had.
doesn't say the cost of the others, so, or the size of them, I should say,
Yeah.
which is relevant.
Okay.
But some of them are quite,
Yeah, it doesn't say what.
individual, there's a couple of individual ones that have a much higher percentage.
Yeah. Because I mean, if you discuss this with somebody, I'm sure they'll, sort of
I'm sure they
Third-
very
try to pick it
well.
apart, or with
Yeah,
some,
look-
try to understand it.
Look at Gold Manor, oh no.
Which one is that?
They're all gonna be there.
Kathy,
Which one's that? What's the?
Gold Manor.
was this widely
Where's that one?
distributed to
This has
different
40
committees and
second.
commissions, or?
I talked about it
Ah.
at planning and zoning.
Okay.
I did bring this up, and I did give a recap
Right.
of the fact that there was this report, and it shows that, in Fairfield, multi-family developments did not have an impact on the school system. So they listened to that.
Okay, yeah, no, I kind of get it now.
But Mark will be, as I said, he'll be one of the guests, and then maybe I can ask him that question about the units, or bedrooms. You know, if people are interested in understanding more about that, you know, he'll be part of the June 26th meeting that Sprat's gonna have. And again, that's gonna be hybrid, so you could just, you know, log in and watch that and participate.
Which day was June?
June 26th.
June 26th.
So is there any other questions or comments on that report?
That's very useful.
All right, so the last item on the agenda
This is good.
is furthering community conversations, and I'd like to turn this over to, we'll start with
Yeah.
Elaine, and then Mary has some interesting reading she's been doing that she's gonna share.
Okay. Ben had been in touch with me, Ben Fake, in an attempt to get a wider community support. We held a meeting at my house on May 21st. The only other person from the housing committee who was there was Lou Schaefer, right? There was nobody else from the housing
Right.
committee. So it was run by Ben and Jamie, who we've met from All In, and Jen from the Bethel Center. I don't know if some of you have met her. And then just a few neighbors. We kept it small. Part for a couple of reasons. Ben just thought it would promote better conversations if there weren't too many people there. And
How many people were there?
so I just counted, there were 12 people brought together by me, and then for Ben, Lou helped me out here, so it was Ben, Jamie, Jen, he brought Kathy Austin and her husband,
Oh, good.
yeah. So altogether, what,
You want family units, or you want, you know, some people came alone, some people
so
came
with
with family.
12 and 12 and another 5 or 6, you know, it was
It was a good
it was
crowd.
a good size, actually.
Yeah, yeah.
Wouldn't you say?
I thought it was a very good size.
Yeah, it was a good size. And they talked about, I mean, the Bethel Center, which I knew nothing about beforehand, is a 501c3 organization and homeless shelter to promote safe housing, address food insecurity, and connect people to relevant services. And Ben's feeling, and I was a little bit skeptical, but as the conversation flowed, I could see his point that if you just talk about how things are so interconnected, how lack of affordable housing affects so many other things, and if you talk about those other things maybe first, and then bring the housing in, it's an easier conversation. Now, that being said, I think everybody at my house that night, with the exception perhaps of one person, we were kind of all on the same page in terms of knowing about the need for more opportunity housing. There was a little bit of pushback from only one person, and it just promoted. I think it promoted a very good, informative conversation as we went around the room, and the way Ben frames it, you know, who are you? What's your name? Why did you come? Several people said, because Elaine cornered me on the street. But
Most people say that.
most people said that. But
That's just easy.
in the end, I thought it actually was informative and productive and a good way to think about things. My concern, because I was thinking, how does it fit into what we're doing? But I understand now that his goal is to make a grassroots community organization that includes committees and organizations, and individuals, all across party lines, with big differences of opinion, possibly. We weren't that night having differences of opinions, but I could see how it could be productive to get groups of people into a room in a non-threatening environment and just talk about issues that concern all of us and how you work together. I'm not sure, I think the next steps, I mean, I know what the next steps are. Ben and Jamie and Jen are connecting with people who were there. That's, I think Ben reached out to you, and they're gonna be talking to everybody who was there one-on-one. And then there is a follow-up meeting scheduled potentially for either July 15th or 16th. And it might be at another home in Woodbridge, or it might be elsewhere. I don't think that's been determined yet. What was your feeling, Lou?
Yep, I think, you know, part of the problem, and there was nothing that indicated, nothing you did that indicated that this was just about housing, but people came in thinking it was the housing committee.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because, you know,
Because
like
they-
James Arness and Amanda Blake, Elaine and I have been typecast as Matt Dillon and Miss Kitty here, I don't know, but they assume maybe that when we walk in the room, that we're there for housing, and we made it very clear that we weren't, that this was a broader picture, that it could include housing, but it could include suicide, loneliness, aging. There's a lot of issues that are local. And I think everybody understood that at one point, but then somebody came in, who came in late, and they went into about a 10-minute speech on it again,
Yeah.
thinking it's about housing, and
Yeah.
it got a little frustrating because housing is part of it, but it's just a small part of it.
Yeah, and I felt compelled, I guess because it was my house and I had invited people, and so there clearly, as Lou said, there were a few people really expecting more information about housing, and I gave a little blurb, which, you know, Ben and I talked about afterwards, and it was fine. It turned out to be okay.
It was a good meeting. I mean, people did, as far as this committee is concerned, it did, we got a lot of comments back on housing. As far as what Ben's, or certainly the woman from Bethel is concerned, you know, I think they probably wanted it to be broader than that. But it still was useful. Ben does a very good job of keeping the conversation on point. Elaine did a great job of entertaining and keeping the conversation on point. And I thought it was a productive session. But I do think he's going to have to, you know, when we're a housing committee, and I think that's the whole idea, is that it would be the housing committee, because then we have to, you know, if all of us were there, then it would be a meeting of the housing committee, and this
Right.
was clearly not a meeting of the housing committee.
Doesn't
There
have
were
to be
two
all
members.
of us.
What?
Doesn't have to be
Yeah,
all of us.
But it has to be over three,
I think three or more
Yes.
constitutes.
And we weren't, and that
Sure,
wasn't
but-
the purpose, was to do housing only.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
8, so then 4 or more.
8. Yeah, 4 more.
But in any event, we were at that number.
So, you know, I've been doing some reading about All In. It does seem to be an effective organization. It's working quite well in Ansonia, Derby, Milford, Oxford, Seymour. Ben was very clear that it doesn't have to be called that, and that every town has different needs and every town organizes it differently. I personally can't take a leadership role, but I'll help from the sidelines in any way that I can, and see if it creates like some momentum, so that, you know, our goal has always been to get as many people involved as possible. So I wound up sort of feeling better about it, that, you know, it could work in concert with what we're trying to do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Was there any like champions that might have emerged from the House meeting that would have like volunteered to start some type of movement with them?
Maybe, perhaps John McLaughlin, who came to our
Okay,
library
okay,
meeting,
yeah, 'cause
he
he
was
wanted-
there,
yeah.
he was there, and I think he might, I think the point of Ben and Jen and Jamie reaching out to individuals is to see what their level of involvement,
Yeah.
how much they're willing, how much time, energy, they're willing to put into this.
This is one-on-one meetings or three-on-one meetings?
One-on-one, Ben has you.
I got,
So, I think I'm assigned new people across the street who were very interested, as we say over and over again, people are often unaware of the issue and the ramifications, and it's important for them to hear it. So, I wound up feeling okay about it, really, in the end, I thought it was
you did a
pretty
great job.
informative.
And I think the only thing that was surprising to me is, I think one person had mentioned that they didn't realize these were open meetings they could attend.
Oh, right, exactly.
And that's surprising because it's,
No, we let them know that,
I'm not surprised.
that they're welcome to come, that
Mhm.
it was recorded.
they're not here tonight.
So I think we'll see where it goes.
Yeah.
July 15th or 16th, so
Yeah, I do, when you talk about like, overlapping, issues that impact, housing, the idea of, homelessness, is a direct result of a lack of affordable housing. And I wonder if, I'm not sure how much Jen spoke about
she
that.
did. She
Yeah.
spoke very eloquently about it.
So I wonder if that's, I try to push that as much as I could within, the amount of time I get to talk about things, but I do think that's such a critical issue for people, because everybody wants to prevent homelessness, and people care about, homeless families, and I'm sure they contribute to organizations, but they don't realize that the action of not creating affordable housing is creating homelessness,
Yeah.
and just making that connection better. And I wonder if that's another, you gotta take it from all different angles, but I wonder if that's if we should promote that more.
You sent something. Jen is giving a presentation.
She is. I didn't send that to everybody, but if people are interested, Jen is having a virtual meeting. I think it's about All In, and it's about Bethel Center. So if you're interested in learning more, I'll just send it out.
And Bethel Center, by the way, she had some, I love it when she come out with statistics, and she was able to pull some very
Really
surprising to me
interesting statistics, yeah.
about the amount of calls they receive from Woodbridge.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
Woodbridge ones could be on housing.
192.
And, right, there was nobody who was gonna be living in a state of homelessness, but there were people who couldn't afford where they were. There were also calls on other things about health, aging, and a whole variety of issues. And by the way, Elaine, Art Temple is a sponsor of Bethel, and Max Case was president there for a number of years.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, she had some very interesting statistics, and it's an eye-opener.
Yeah. That reminds me, perhaps when I talk to the Board of Selectmen, I should also bring that board to show that there was 192 calls.
Mhm.
And those are unduplicated calls. And those are from folks in Woodbridge that would call that number. A third of those calls was related to shelter, which means that they had a problem,
Mhm.
with the housing. So that just.
And I think people were very surprised to hear that.
Me included.
Yeah. And I think, as you have pointed out so many times, it would be unusual to go from Woodbridge to homelessness, but all you need are a couple of steps
Yeah.
in between.
Yep.
You lose a job, you have catastrophic illness, you have 2 or 3 things happen, and all of a sudden, there you are.
Yep. And what she was saying too is that Woodbridge people may not be going from Woodbridge to homelessness in one step, but they're going one step down, which makes less available one step down, so those people go down a step because
Yeah.
it's not available anymore, the market
Yeah.
market prices, and in the end of the day, somebody else is gonna be homeless.
Domino effect.
So, anyway, it was an interesting learning experience, I'll say that.
Cool. Any other questions for Elaine?
So your follow-up meeting is already scheduled?
Ben is trying to schedule something for July 15th or 16th. I'm assuming that's not at my house.
He likes the late snacks, she does have the best snacks.
Yeah, I do good snacks. I did ask him, do we know where? Is it gonna be in Woodbridge or else, somebody's house in Woodbridge or elsewhere? And I think it hasn't been determined yet.
Okay,
So
all right.
I'll let you know when I know.
So, you know, I have been disappointed that the community conversations hasn't done what I might hope it would
Mhm.
have done and what I know Ben would want it to do. And that the notion is that you get people together and you get them knowledgeable, but more than that, you get them fired up. So they will go out and they will do another community conversation, or they'll come back to another presentation, or and as I say, preferably that they take some kind of leadership role to spread the conversations and to get more people involved and thinking about the topics that are at hand. We didn't have that experience with our first round of community conversations. And so one has to spend a lot of time, if you're interested in making it work, to try to figure out what the problem was. Not that I mean to say it was a problem, but what's missing.
What could we have done differently?
What happens elsewhere when it works? And what can we do to make it work? Or what can we do to identify the circumstances in which we are going to need to be ready to meet whatever the need is with this kind of opportunity for information.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because I'm an academic or was trained like that, but I always think that what people need is information. And that's our job as the housing committee, is to be ready to answer those questions and to get people really informed and knowledgeable about the problems and how they apply locally. But how do you get them in the room? I mean, one of the problems is, how do you get them fired up? And that's the kind of work that Ben does. He has a technique for doing this, for bringing people in, for structuring the conversation, for making sure that it doesn't go off track too much. And I was telling Kathy that I was reading this book called The Persuaders, which I recommend. This guy is rather famous, and apparently everybody seems to know about him, who reads this kind of stuff. And I found it very heavy going at the beginning, but then you get that the notion is, and it reminded me of Ben, because he talks about circumstances in which the requirement is that you persuade people, that you get people who don't necessarily think like you do, to come and talk to you. You determine the degree to which your thinking generally overlaps, and you build out from there. And that was kind of what you were talking about just now. You don't talk about your subject necessarily. You talk about the things you have in common, or the interests you have in common, and then you bring in the topics that are relevant to your agenda. Now, when we had our conversations, we did end up talking about housing, but he introduced it as saying, who do you know who has trouble with their housing? And it was soft.
Yeah, to
Thing,
make
not-
it relatable.
Yeah. But of course, different kinds of things attract different people. Some of them are really heavy into statistics, and they want to get right into the nitty-gritty. What worries me is we know that we have some things on the horizon in Woodbridge. We know that we're having trouble getting people to, who are not already invested in it, to really participate. But you know that we've got stuff on the horizon that's gonna bring people to the table in a hurry. And that's gonna be when that, I presume, when the, what do you call it, you know, the court case
We're
Oh,
open to
that-
comes up.
Yeah, they're still battling
And-
around
and
preliminary
it's-
discovery issues. It's coming.
Yes.
It's eventually gonna come. And another one is going to be the Country Club of
Yeah,
Woodbridge, if
if
anything
and when there's a
happens there.
referendum, yeah.
Yeah, so I was saying to Kathy, what concerns me is that in general, which is not necessarily connected to what I was just saying, but in general, I think that it's particularly important for us to be prepared. When people want that information, we need to be ready for them.
Mhm.
And when they, and to make the community conversations is helpful in helping us to understand how to approach the conversations publicly,
Mhm.
so that we do know how to do the approach that brings people in rather than calling them out. That was one of the interesting challenges here. One of the things that he talks about in the chapter is the tendency currently for people to be called out. That's how you have a conversation with people. You point your finger at them and you say, you are you and I am me. And you know, and all this kind of judgmental stuff that is culturally current right now, and it makes it extra hard to get people to settle down and talk about what they really need to do to change for the better. So you have that whole first, and you mean
Yeah.
the snacks really
You know,
help you get past that point. They can only go so far.
Ben was saying that, or Jen was saying maybe, for all these towns that have ongoing, you know, have successful all-in meetings, that everybody floundered at the beginning. It took shape sort of slowly. And, you know, as I said, every town does it differently. I think Milford, Lou, do you remember? I think it was Milford that has like a Zoom meeting once a week, and then they get together in person once a month.
I think that's-
But it,
Jamie's from Milford, right?
Once a week, that's a lot.
Well, you have people who are on
That's right.
staff. My vision was that there would be a standing meeting, not necessarily run by us, maybe by Human Services, at the library, for people to come and talk about Woodbridge and what they would like to see in Woodbridge.
yeah, that would be
And-
great.
And maybe people show up, and maybe they don't, and maybe they talk about this, or maybe they don't talk about that. But it would be a forum for people to come and express the things that concern them.
Mhm.
And it would be a standing meeting, so that people could either show up or not show up.
Mhm.
And it would not, you know, necessarily require a lot of extra effort. I don't know who would do it, you know, I don't
Well,
know, but that
maybe-
would be,
Human,
Kathy
I was, maybe Human
Right.
Services.
Human
could
Services is the
participate.
logical one to do
Yeah.
it. And the town is the logical one, or maybe the POCD, whatever.
Yeah.
It's, housing is one of our problems, and as I say, we have to be ready to hit the ground running when it becomes a very present problem and
Mhm,
issue.
mhm.
And we have to keep doing the kinds of things that we're doing, and discussing ways to continue to educate the public. I think doing a video is a great idea. I think doing articles is a very good idea. I don't know how else to push that information out so it's accessible and people will actually, you know.
I think Ben was talking to Kathy Austin today, actually.
Oh, good, good.
About
Yeah.
further. Speaking of articles, did the ADU article ever get?
I haven't seen it come out, but again, there isn't like
There's no
There
town
is a
paper
place-
anymore.
Yeah.
there used to be like a
that's
town, you know, it's like both the town paper and the Woodbridge Town News, just, you know, which were two pieces, you know,
Yeah.
sources of information for folks, you know, no longer exists. And you get the newsletters, but the newsletters are more kind of like events and informational, there isn't any articles within the, you know, news, not the news, the email blasts that come out from the town. So I
We
don't,
don't have any journalism.
yeah, so I don't know where we could even publish this information now.
Well, we can post it on our website, can't we? We could make a poster and put it up in the library and around and about. I mean,
Yeah, I was wondering, because I know some of the committees have like documents like shared drive, a shared drive, where we could actually go in and see some documents that they have accumulated, you know, in terms of plans and reports and things of that sort. And I'm wondering if we should come up with a way, because we do have, you know, I pass out a lot of information, and maybe, you know, people would be interested in, and now all this information is posted online, and I'm wondering whether or not we should have like a file of just different, you know, documents that we talk about that people could reference, and then we can have like articles or news or, you know,
things we could point to.
we could point to.
Well, you can, I mean, one of the problems, of course, is our website page is just incomprehensible. You can't find anything on it.
Yeah.
It's just one thing after the other. It's not designed, in other words, and that makes it very difficult. But if we don't have something that we can point to, and say somebody calls us up, you know, metaphorically speaking, and says, what about ADUs? Then we can just point them to all the information that they need. I don't know what they're giving out at the building.
Yeah, but I wonder if it's just, sustainability seems like they're doing a good job. I wonder, do they have like a website or?
Building?
No, sustainability committee.
Oh, sustainability.
They, you know, because they were so organized during that event, and they had a link, and they had, you know, all the information on there. I wonder if they're doing that to their, I wonder if they have a website now. I could see them doing that because they seem to be a little wee bit younger than us and more tech
Could I make
savvy.
an observation? I think one of the fundamental difficulties we're facing is that I don't know that a lot of people are aware or care about or think that there's a problem. Okay? And no matter, you know, and we can try to publicize that and get people talking about it, but the reality is that in the real world, you know, legislation doesn't happen until there's a crisis. Not always, but often.
Yeah.
Okay, and to get folks to appreciate the challenges, the difficulties that we are about to face, is hard. You know, because people don't come to these meetings. People don't read the stuff that you put out. People, not you, us, anybody. So the trick here, but the challenge is to get people to focus and to get them to understand what, you know, what we're ultimately going to be confronting. And that's not easy.
Do you think a video would be?
It might. I don't know. I mean, you know, what would be, you know, look, I mean, if there was a particularly compelling, egregious situation that arose and became public about people falling into, you know, homelessness, okay, that might get people's attention. Okay, it might, you know, it might get them in, you know, in the gut where it matters. But, you know, when it's all, to most people it's either they don't care, or it's theoretical, or it's academic,
Yeah.
or it doesn't affect me, or, you know.
They don't know what they can do. It's
Yeah, well, there's
impossible.
that too.
You gotta
And
have a step, yeah.
So
You're
we-
right about that, because Allison also came later in the evening, and she gave, you know, a great example of herself. She said, what if something were to happen to my husband? You know, what
Yeah.
if he predeceased me? She has two kids, I think, 2 or 3. She said, I don't think I could afford to live in Woodbridge. You know, I'd have to leave. So I think the more that people hear relatable situations, you know, people my age who want to downsize, where would you go?
Yeah, and that's why it's too bad that Woodbridge Town News you know, I wanted to do like.
Yeah, because we could do some really good articles in there.
Yeah,
for sure.
I wanted to do, always wanted to do like this regular series of, you know, my housing story, you know, because we know folks that, you know, raised their families in Woodbridge and, you know, their husbands died and they, you know, ended up, there was no options in Woodbridge and they ended up going to Fieldstone or Branford. And to be in a community, to be more of a community setting, where, you know, they could be around people and they just didn't have the option to go anywhere in Woodbridge. And so that's like one story. And then, you know, a story of, I even think about the person I used to write for, Woodbridge Town News, Bettina, you know, she wanted to downsize. She raised her kids and they were looking to downsize and there was nothing for them, no place for them to go, so they ended up moving to Milford. So we lost, you know, a Woodbridge resident that would have been great.
And the other issue that Allison raised was the need that people have for community. You know, that's
Yeah.
what's so great about the walking trail in the middle of Woodbridge.
Right.
You walk and you see people, and there's a dog park, and it feels like community. And I think she used the example of Pease Park that she lives very close to, and she said it's just so wonderful to be able to let her children, to know that it's a safe environment for her kids to run around, and there would be other children there, and you meet other parents. And I walked with somebody last week whose children just moved to Woodbridge. I'm going to get them involved eventually because they're really seeking community. You know, they really, they live on Clark Road off
Okay.
of Route 69, and you know, right now they're just busy setting up their house. They have a 2.5-year-old child, but the mom was saying she's surprised they moved to Woodbridge because community was so important to them. But they're also nature lovers, so I think there's a real need among young people.
Did they just move into that red house?
I don't know their
That's
house.
like halfway up the hill?
I don't know which house they're in.
I think we have to be very careful of what examples we use. I'm not really sure. I don't know what it costs to go into Fieldstone, but I don't think it's that cheap.
Oh,
So
no,
I
Oh,
think-
it's not an
No,
example
no,
of
no,
affordable.
Somebody can't
That's-
afford to be
Yeah,
in
it's
Woodbridge, they're not going to
It's an
Fieldstone.
example of options, you know, I'm not, and, because our
Yeah,
job is
that-
not only affordable housing, it's housing options. So the fact that there isn't any, like, options for, you know, seniors that wanna downsize, that have, you know, enough money to, you know, move somewhere.
Because a lot of people want to leave a house because, number one, they don't want to shovel anymore.
Right,
There's only
right,
one adult
right.
there.
Walk the
they don't need
steps.
all that. Exactly.
Right, and those options don't exist in Woodbridge.
Yeah, but I mean, you're right, Lou. I mean, that's not the most compelling
Yes, no.
situation to feature if you're trying to get people's attention, because, you know.
Isn't that too bad?
Yeah, but I mean, I'm sure somebody said if you bring somebody a problem, you should bring 3 solutions, right? You know, but I'm having difficulty trying to figure out how to get people's attention. Because it's very easy to just simply, you know, just ignore it, put your head in the sand, or say, I don't know. Everything's fine by me.
That's why I say it will be an opportunity for us when these matters come to a head.
Yeah.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
And
And you gotta be
it
ready
will
for it.
bring all the people out who are, you know, currently gearing up to fight it. And we have to be ready with compelling arguments too,
Well,
on the other side.
Yes.
So that it doesn't tear the town apart. You know,
Well, we
that
also
people
have to
will
get
feel
people
good
interested.
about choosing the alternative that we would like them to choose.
Well, I'm not suggesting for a second that we
No.
shouldn't be prepared for that, but in order to stimulate that, to bring it to a head, you know, it seems to me that, you know, something's got to exist that has some, you know, power to it.
Yeah. that's
Otherwise,
what I'm
people are
saying.
just going to continue to sort of ignore it.
Or they will say, as we all say, oh, this is just terrible and something must be done
Right.
someplace else maybe, or I don't know what I can do, and then you get going on the rest of your life and you ignore it again. That's what people do for many problems,
Yeah.
many social problems. But it's good to talk about it, at least to make you aware. And that's why I said, we need a forum, we need a newspaper articles, we need and the conversations are really intended to do that. But there's a lot of organization that's involved in that, and if you have a regular opportunity, then you don't necessarily, and it's well advertised, and you don't necessarily have to go to the trouble of reaching out and getting people. You can say you are invited. And if it's successful, then, people may come. I don't know. Maybe we should just try harder what we've been doing and go and shake the lapels of people in more religious communities in town and see if that conduit might work better than what we have been doing. But it does take time and effort, as you know, and if it doesn't come to fruition beyond that 10 people who show up, then you have to wonder, is this the best way to do this? And I don't have the answers. I've just been
Yeah.
really worried about the question.
One thing that we might want to consider is we have a pretty good idea of what the objections to increasing opportunity housing. We have a pretty good idea. One is the schools. One is the I don't know, the open space.
Yes.
Maybe it's time for us to to sort of let's chapter and verse address those. So we all know, okay, here's you got the Fairfield example, you got the Oxford example of school kids and stuff, and let's get those points clear in our own mind, and then we can start publishing things of that nature. We'll know what to say when people you've been saying this for a long time.
Get our FAQs
But
together.
we get our be colloquial act together, so that we what are the principal objections? How do you meet them? And some of them may be legitimate, and you may have to concede. Yeah, there's a point, but there's countervailing things. I mean, one of the things I think we're going to have to concede, and people who are honest will have to concede. There's only so much space. We do need to create opportunities for more people to be here. Those opportunities have to be affordable in some sense of the way. So that means you either, build on places like the country club, or you change your zoning so that you either whack the space up a little bit more so you can build more. You have to do that,
Build
and
more
compromises
infrastructure.
have to be made. It's kind of like making sausage. You don't want to see it, but it has to be done. And that's. But maybe it's time
Well,
I don't know.
as you say, if people don't accept the fact that we have a problem that really needs a solution, we have to come up with a solution to it, then they're not going to sit down and do that kind of compromise. They're going to say, yeah, well, that's a problem, and call me later.
Well, that's why
and
you may need there may need to be a stimulus, a crisis, something. Okay, it's going to come, by the way.
it is
So I
definitely-
accept what you're suggesting.
It
is
may
that we
be
need
the
to be ready for it.
Fair Share Act. We may get that 10% as a requirement,
Yeah. So
There's a lot more support for that than I expected.
yeah.
It's going to make some people very angry for this.
Well,
I mean, they're having trouble just with transit-oriented, but that's in this POCD, very strongly worded, so that's good. But none of it, we don't have any transit-oriented spots except maybe for,
Well, we could,
The-
transit
That where we
oriented,
could-
that doesn't need to be fast track or, it could be a bus, or a charging station or something like that could be part of, transportation.
and I don't mean to suggest that we shouldn't continue to push for, mixed use in the flats, or, just a little, or advertising, hopefully if the Toll Brothers thing is a success, pointing to that as an example of multi-use housing that's attractive. There are all these little things we can do, and we need to do them. And you keep us on track for those very, very well.
I did send out, along, I think, these lines, the conversations toolkit. I don't know if folks, I know you looked at that, but,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I thought it was interesting looking at it, because they talk about targeting audience, and it kind of reminded me of like, what Ben did in the beginning, the power mapping. And they group it into influencers and champions and gatekeepers and public at large, and coming up with those different, you know, audiences in terms of how you have to target information and messaging. What are you saying? You know, and it could be that we need to come up with a persuasive a statement that's not going to like be offensive to people, where people could like buy in and say, yeah, that makes sense. You know, yeah, I see that now. And I'm not sure how you do that, but, you know,
I mean, we're all saying the same thing, really. There's, I mean, for instance, the meeting that we had at Temple Emmanuel, it was a great meeting,
Oh, yeah.
but, you know, what came of it? So unless you have an ongoing forum, and maybe a drop-in thing, as Mary said, you know, what are you envisioning, like a weekly drop-in, or monthly?
Yeah, maybe weekly would be nice, wouldn't it? Because then people wouldn't have to remember what day of the, you know, what week of the month that was going to be. That was just a vision.
Yeah.
I was
Well,
going to follow
I
up on
think
something you
that's,
said.
I think that's Ben's point about All In, is
Yeah.
the way it,
it's structured.
But you
it's
really,
structured and
yeah.
grows, and it's worked in other towns. I don't know, maybe he can do his magic
Maybe they have
here.
magic people. I mean, when I think of myself as being somebody like Ben, it just doesn't work at all. I just don't have that kind of personality. You know, that you would really want to go out there and mix it up with people.
Yeah,
I don't,
Yeah.
well, you know, I stay
can't do
behind
that.
my computer and I write. I'd like to be one of those people, but maybe in my next incarnation that will happen, but it's not going to happen in this one.
Okay.
But, you know, I think one of the problems that we have with our topic is that it is complicated, and the solutions are even more complicated. It's not easy to have a phrase, you know, like Black Lives Matter or something like that you can rally around and pretend that you know what it means. It's, we just don't, right? You have to explain lots of things to people.
Yeah. Well, I think this is just going to be a discussion that's going to have to be continued.
I'll be curious to see how many people show up at the next meeting, you know,
Yeah.
if a momentum really does start to happen, that would be wonderful.
It would be nice, because
Well,
I think
I don't
that's the whole idea, is that you bring the idea that you bring 10 people, and those 10 people bring 10 people, and then, you know, then you create a movement. But I don't think, you know, we got beyond the initial,
know.
you know.
We
like-
haven't.
We
So I
tried
think the
to-
idea is that you get people, then they will write the letters. You know, if you want them to write a letter to the editor, or if you want them to come and testify or something, then you've got their, and they'll be willing to do it
Mhm.
and prepared to do it. I think that's the idea there. If you're working against, you know, something, working for something that's controversial, there's always going to be the people who are there to speak against it, but the people who speak for it are more likely to stay home, and that's a problem for us too,
Unfortunately,
right?
that's true.
You gotta give them a
Seems
reason,
to be.
you gotta give people a reason to come out and support.
You have to give them a script too.
So Gavrilo Princip.
That
So
helps.
we need Gavrilo Princip.
Who?
You know who Gavrilo Princip is?
Uh-uh.
I'll tell you later.
Oh, okay.
Is this being picked up by the microphones?
We're just mumbling away here.
Just a video.
Oh, so those were just thoughts.
Okay, well, I guess to be continued, and we'll see what happens
Yeah.
with the next
And
meeting.
that- yeah.
And hopefully, you know, this will start creating a movement. The idea is, at some point, this is going to catch on, but, I do think, more people know about this issue than they did before we started
Oh,
this, right?
absolutely.
For sure.
So,
Absolutely.
For sure.
people are aware that,
Well, that's
that
part
we're
of it.
talking about housing is an issue, it's
Yeah.
being brought up, it's being certainly brought up by this administration, talking about the need for housing, so,
That's true.
I think there has been, even though it doesn't seem that it's enough, I think it is growing. So, hopefully at some
Can't be
point.
fast enough. But I think just our existence is important. And so people have this focus, and they know it's part of the government, it's part of the
Right.
community, something that needs to be looked into. And hopefully they know who to ask if they have questions or want to comment.
And
Which
it's
is-
talk of this becoming a formal commission, we're still I still like to consider the idea of having a housing authority to actually, create housing and have the power and the resources to do that. Because I don't think, the idea of having like New Haven Housing Authority, I just don't see that working in this town, even though that would be a real effective way of creating housing. But, you have to have, you need to have a mechanism to actually, do this and be a development agency or a housing authority. Because you don't have, but we have a planner now. We do have a part-time planner who has a pretty good affordable housing acumen. So I think that is going to be helpful. So hopefully we could start working with whoever from this firm is going to be working. But they do have a good affordable housing resume.
Okay.
So somebody's been hired? A firm has been?
I think they're still working out the contract, but it's going to be soon. So, and that's, I really do think once we get the real capacity of having someone advise us in terms of our strategies, because I think we have a really good idea of what needs to be done. It's just, okay, how do you operationalize that and get it done? And that requires some
That's-
professional help,
Yeah, yeah.
of which, I'm a kind of a generalist with this, but, I'm not someone that's gonna write a text amendment to the plan, to the POCD or for zoning regulations. You need somebody who's really going to, be able to have that expertise in them.
Yeah.
So that person would come and speak to us, would he not? She not?
Yeah, I would hope that,
That would be good.
whoever it is would come and help us with our strategies and guide us as to how we do this,
And if not, we'll go to them.
or we go to them. Now, what are we gonna say something, or?
Oh, it's just, Guilford has a housing authority
Right,
that works, it's very small, but it seems to
do a lot.
get
Yeah,
things
they-
done, yeah. And it doesn't raise much of a stir either, so.
Yeah, that's a good idea too, because their housing committee is now going to become a commission. And I thought it was interesting that their housing committee was actually a subcommittee of the Economic Development
Mhm.
Commission, not of,
It's not independent.
So-
That's logical to me.
It is logical because housing probably is the biggest economic development driver in Woodbridge. But yeah,
Not to your son.
it would be interesting to probably, you know the Guilford person, maybe, yeah, maybe we should bring him in or bring her in. Is he,
Oh, the guy was telling you?
yeah.
I'm sure he just retired, so he's.
Yeah, just talk about his experience in Guilford. Because they're doing some great stuff. They passed the inclusionary zoning. It would be good to hear their experience.
I think he was the town planner there for 30 years at least.
Yeah.
Was your impression at the Earth Day thing that a lot of the people that stopped by the little table were pretty up to speed and already interested in the housing issue?
I don't know if they're up to speed, but they seem to be interested and
Yeah.
engaged. So
We have that list, right, of
Yeah.
people signed?
we had, and I don't know, did anybody reach out to them, or did Ben reach out to them, or?
No, I think, by design, just to keep it
Yeah.
small. I
So-
don't know,
So we do have
yeah.
the list, but people, generally speaking, when we talk to people, they're pro affordable housing, or neutral, and it could be talked into,
Yeah,
be talked into it, so.
it was the right direction.
Yeah, there isn't, I mean, there is, you have your group of people that are just against it at all costs, but I think for the most part, people are either supportive or neutral.
Yeah,
There's a subgroup of the supporters in general or in principle who would be more than happy to have it happen other than in their own neighborhood. Okay, so you're going to make for the possibility that support may not be solid.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, there are people feel pretty strongly, but you don't hear from them.
and then one young were you there to hear her say, "What is taking so long? Why hasn't this happened already?"
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot of people that feel that way too, so I think we've got a real cross-section.
Well, it's going to be years before a lot of this stuff is to go. People have to
Oh,
understand
yeah.
that. I mean,
Mhm.
4 years is good.
Yeah, 4 years is a good,
Mhm.
it's a good thing, yeah.
So,
So,
but, you have to be realistic about that too.
Yeah, one of the things that did pop out at me from the POCD thing, it's not POCD, it's got a different set of acronyms. The state's plan draft was, as you said, that the state's construction industry is just moribund now. There's so little going on. You don't have the people to actually do the work. Is that my understanding, right?
She doesn't look like it.
No, it doesn't.
So which is the chicken, which is the egg? There's not much to
Exactly,
do, and then
exactly,
there's nobody to do the work that there is to
exactly.
do. And
That's right. There
Yeah.
isn't. You have the money, at least in Woodbridge, is made in these great big buildings, these great big houses,
Yeah.
done one at a time. And they have to be big in order to make a lot of money, so. You would think it would be a great idea to be doing multifamily stuff, because then you'd get a lot more bang for your buck. But there's all these inhibitions, of course. But I'd like to see a really nicely designed multifamily plan for some site. I wish I knew somebody on the Yale Architecture School faculty to see if they wouldn't like to do a charrette or something.
well, it's interesting, because the deputy commissioner of housing, Brandon, what's his name, McGee, he did like this, and I forgot where he did it, but he did like this, this session with the Yale School of Architecture, I think with the School of Management, with the law school, and another group. And they designed, they took an area and designed like a connectivity plan, and have dense housing and connected it with the business, and they just all kind of worked together and scoped it out. And I was like, that would be really cool if we could do that for, and I keep on thinking about the heights, if we were able, where the theater lots,
Mhm.
call them, but, if you're able to build high density up there, which you probably, it wouldn't be a problem, because you're at the highest peak, so you're not blocking up anybody's view. And you have the connectivity of having some, just kind of some pathways coming down to the business, feeding into the business district, and then you got foot traffic into the business, and you have connectivity. I just think it would be such a cool idea if we just got like some very smart people come in to just kind of envision and just kind of scope it out,
Duration study.
so,
Yeah.
anyway.
A lot of blue sky thinking tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe one of,
Hey,
one-
listen, look, people in the architecture school always need a project to work on, right?
they do, they
So?
do. I should probably,
Be nice to have Yale on our side.
oh yeah, that's
Yale
true.
doesn't oversight its own.
Yeah. Maybe that's a
We'll
part of the
go with that
settlement.
case.
It's gonna get worse like that.
Okay, so I think this will be continued. I don't, do we have any action steps on this for the
We
community
gotta make
Yes.
calls to our,
The real estate.
real estate people.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll let you know about the next meeting, when and if and where.
Oh, good.
Sounds
Yeah,
good.
and you're sending something. You're gonna draft response to the state plan and conservation development and circulate that for comment.
Yeah, some of them are called, usually I get called.
Okay, so with that, can I have a motion to adjourn?
May I move to adjourn this evening's meeting?
Seconded, all in favor?
All in favor, thank you.